Hello students, as part of our practice for civil services mains examination essay paper, today we have the topic in hand. It reads, God is everywhere. Such a brief and succinct statement. And what if I am a non-believer? What if I am an agnostic? This statement has to be read very carefully. Obviously, it is talking about God and its omnipresence. We, as groomed in the tradition of different religions, Abrahamic religions or other religions like Christianity or Hinduism, or even the religions which are very silent on the existence of God. It is whole lot of concept of God. God, a tangible entity, with shape and form, deities and gods, she and he. God as a physical icon, and God without having any form and shape. It's all confusing business. But our job is not to get confused. First of all, as a principle, always try to read a statement with a positive bent of mind without applying any kind of critical tool. A statement as it is, it talks about God, if you underline, and talks about its omnipresence. A nice idea. At least, even if God exists as an idea, it is a very useful idea. It fills us with inspiration, hope, optimism when we are defeated, forlorn, alone, desolate, isolated, when we feel bad about things happening around us, and when we are alone, nobody comes forward to help us out. We always start thinking about God. Sukh mein sumiran sab kare, dukh mein sumiran sab kare, sukh mein kare na koi. So the times of adversity is the time when people think about God. That is the statement which I said in Hindi means that normally we think about God when we are trapped, enmeshed, we are in a soup, we are fallen, we falter, we flounder, we are in difficulty. We remember God. In fact, I said that even if God is not available in a tangible form and shape, as a psychological entity, deep within our feeling, there is something which inspires us, which gives us hope and optimism, even in the worst of circumstances. So, God is an icon. God is something, even without its physical shape and form, it is something which exists, even if it exists in psychology. So, in that sense, God exists everywhere. When it comes to other interpretations about God, inherent in this idea, God is everywhere, is the belief that God is almighty and God is omnipresent. The monotheist believe that God is one, and that monotheism, the Abrahamic religions, Islam also comes from that. They believe that God is one, and then there are two kinds of people, believers and non-believers. And they believe that believers are good and non-believers are not good. But this is a very rude and raw kind of understanding, even about the monotheistic traditions. It's not about non-believers and believers. It is about the recommendations, codes of conduct, and things for which a particular religion stands. All the religions, monotheist or polytheists, they believe in goodness, kindness, compassion, love, mutual coexistence. But there is a danger in monotheism. The danger is dividing the community into believers and non-believers, and all believers are good, all non-believers are evil, and then waging a war against non-believers. That could be a very raw kind of interpretation, rather than entering into the essence of the religion for which it stands, its very foundations on which it stands. So God is everywhere, first of all, could be seen as a psychological entity. Probably Buddhists and Jainists will be more happy, because when it came to existence of God, they usually kept mum. They didn't talk about existence of God, but they talked about methods which can make you to live your life well, rather than falling into the trap of discussing whether God exists or not, and if it exists, what is the shape and form. They are not paying more attention to that. So the first thing about God, God is as an icon of goodness, God as a symbol of a psychological entity that inspires, that gives hope, that gives optimism, that helps you when you are defeated, fallen, alone, desolate. God exists. It feels that God is around me. I am doing my things with my true heart. God will help me. And that's why we say God is benevolent. God is not only almighty and omnipresent. It is the reason that since God is benevolent, then God is just. Then God provides equal opportunity to everybody without any discrimination. So in that sense, that psychological entity, and then talking about monotheism and talking about polytheism, and after that talking about religion dividing between believers and non-believers, is probably replete with danger of dividing people and replete with danger of misrepresentation and misinterpretation. Polytheism is more liberal, like Hinduism is a religion in which you have many forms of God. Even some people don't believe in God with shape and form. They believe in God which is not visible, but it still exists. So that tradition allows God, female gods, male gods, and different kind of traditions within the Hindu tradition itself. And later on, there were hybrid notions. When good attributes of all the religions were pooled together, and we found that Sufism is one such byproduct of the notion of God. And God as something unreachable was the notion which Sufis defied. They said that God is inside. Tera sai tujhme. They said that God is all around us. And they treated God as a friend rather than God as a supreme being. In Hindu spiritualism, the highest tradition says that our Atman is part of the Paramatman. So God is everywhere. Whatever be our interpretation, God is everywhere is a notion which cannot be disagreed easily. And rather, this understanding that God is everywhere could be even extended beyond religion. That wherever you see beauty, probably what we can use Urdu alfaz, that whatever is beautiful is basically what we call Allah ka noor. So anything which looks bright, anything which looks very attractive and fascinating, Probably it's part of the beauty of the God, the notion of God. So you can see a struggling man not yielding is beautiful. A hungry man trying to do everything just to overcome the hunger, meet the requirement, nutritional requirements, not yielding and quitting. An animal which is fighting for its survival with another animal superior in the food chain, you can just see how beautiful. The chasing is beautiful, hunting is beautiful, but also the efforts to save your life, struggling for that is also beautiful. So when people say that God is here and God is there or God is not in existence, probably every moment a blooming flower, a fighting soldier, a poor man having big dreams and acting on that, all these things could be seen as Allah ka Noor, the beauty of God. God is really everywhere. If God won't have been, the optimism might have died. In Europe, when the notion of God was being misutilized by the churches and salvation certificates were being given by the churches, church was overarching, having all land rights, church was overarching in the name of religion, exploiting the people and giving them a salvation certificate. As long as church is not giving you this certificate, you won't be free from the cycle of life. That was the kind of overarching role churches were doing. And even then, existence of religion was not able to prevent corruption, not able to prevent violence. And therefore, there were some philosophers, Schopenhauer is one of them, who said that God has died. If there is no goodness, then where is God? So, there are many people who will feel that God is an entity which has been just created for no reason. If God as an icon of good attributes and goodness is not visible in real life, where is God? How can we say that God is everywhere when evil is succeeding over good? When good is always trying to find ways to save himself or herself from the attacks of the evil. In fact, this kind of understanding that God is not available, probably it's just a matter how do we see the world. World is all made up of the stuff what we call good and the stuff what we call evil. It is a combination of that. Our individual entity is also made out of goodness and badness. The thing is that what we want to see and what we want to make out of the attributes which God has gifted us. So, God, goodness and God as evil, both of them are available. In fact, the evil form of God or evil expression of God is probably not considered to be God. Evil is evil, good is God. That is how we interpret God. So, all goodness, if it is not prevailing in life, the answer does not lie in God. The divisions between communities is drawn by man. The division between rich and man is drawn by man. It's not God. God is an arbiter, of course, and that arbiter usually has ensured that evil does not have a long life. Evil does not have prestige and social respect. It may be a temporary affair, but everything is transitory. You see all religious scriptures that evil eventually was defeated, and the Kathopanishad great sentence, Satyameva Jayate, is probably what the whole civilization believes, no matter what religion it follows. So, goodness and God, they have been always put on the higher pedestal. So, God died young, the thesis of Schopenhauer, or what a novelist from India, Shashti Vrat, wrote a novel, My God Died Young, taking from Vladimir Nabokov, a Russian author, writing in a poetic style. This My God Died Young was a novel written with this title of the word, this title and these words were from Vladimir Nabokov, that great author of Lolita, a celebrated book, but he has written so many things. Lolita became popular because of its objectionable stuff. But Vladimir Nabokov's word, My God Died Young, taken for the title of the novel by Shashti Vrat, it talks about we can create the situation in which goodness can flourish or die. Our situations, our poverty, our misery, our dehumanized existence can kill the God inside us, or at least they can impede the process of God getting expressed in our life. That is where we have to be cautious. that our poverty is not permanent, that our misery is not permanent. If night has befallen, then dawn will also come. That kind of belief will only come if you believe that there is something called God exists, even if it is psychological, that goodness has to prevail and Satyameva Jayate has to win eventually. And it happens. All scriptures have shown this. Whether you go to Mahabharata or Ramayana, even Quran, everywhere the winning stake is for the goodness. It is not meant for evil. Evil has to be destroyed. Evil has to be put aside or set aside. That's why all religions say. In fact, even Christianity or Judaism, you look, monotheism or polytheism, everywhere we believe that God is something good, benevolent, just, equitable. That is the notion of God. So when we talk about Rama or Maryada Purushottam Ram, who is an icon of God or icon of among all gods, or Krishna, you will see that they are an agglomeration of goodness. What we call good, we try to find out in Rama or Krishna, and they become mirror of society. That mirror is very important, and that's why you can see that God is everywhere. When you try to find it out, you will see that God is there in whatever is good in your constitution. God is there, whatever is appreciated in the society. God is there in mutual coexistence, in cooperation, in loving, in our love for children, in our liking for flowers, so in our liking for pets. It is an expression of Atman, which is part of the Paramatman. Appreciating God means eventually that. In spiritualism, therefore, there are many ways to agree with this statement and give it an elaboration. Not easy for everybody, because you can begin, but when you talk about God is everywhere, you will have to see these theses and counter theses, and then eventually our tradition or even tradition elsewhere, God as an agglomeration of good attributes, and good attributes lasts, they endure, they are present. That is the guarantee that God is also present. So God is everywhere. Now that Schopenhauer kind of disenchantment from churches and all wrongdoings and violence of the pre-Renaissance period, what prompted Schopenhauer to say that God has died, probably will be death of our optimism and inspiration. Maybe he was considered to be a pessimist philosopher in some respects, but that pessimism was a constructive pessimism in one sense, that he was just lamenting that even if God exists, goodness does not prevail. So that's the duty of the practitioners of all the religions, that goodness is practiced. Only then this thesis will be complete. God is everywhere must look that God is everywhere in our social institutions, in our families, in our countries, in our global activities. If it is visible that goodness is prevailing, obviously we will be believing that God is everywhere. Otherwise, our minds will be shaky and we will be giving arguments like agnostics that God is not there. In fact, God and religion sometimes may lead to fatalism. Sometimes they can act as an opium. Sometimes they can act as a great divider. I mean, that's the threat about believing that God is everywhere. Whose God is everywhere? Is it Abrahamic God, or is it Hindu God, or is it Christian God? Whose polytheism or monotheism, tangible shape and formly God, or a God without any form and shape? This debate will be never ending. So the best way to see and look upon God is look upon God with faith, belief, and trust that God is something which is an agglomeration of goodness, and it's very important that God is reflected in our day-to-day living, and that could be only possible when good prevails over the evil. That is the final message. Thank you.